Hi everyone, Sean here with the China Culture Corner. Working with Chinese companies can be a wonderful career opportunity and a great life experience. However, there are some key risks and considerations overseas talent should be aware of before they sign that offer letter. So, let's look back on my own experience in China and see what you need to know. If you've seen my previous videos, you'll know that I've worked with Chinese companies and Chinese tech firms for the past 12 years. And I have almost completely enjoyed the experience, and I've learned so many great and wonderful lessons. However, there are difficulties that Western and overseas talent can face. There are the cultural issues, whether it be acclimatizing to the Chinese culture, a different working style, as well as risks from a career and organizational point of view, such as those that impact whether you can communicate with your team, whether you can perform your job, whether you can keep your job even. And so those are some of the risks and considerations we'll be discussing today. This is not meant to dissuade anyone from joining a Chinese company, working in China. It's simply something you need to be aware of, so you make sure that when you accept an opportunity, it's the right opportunity, it's the acceptable opportunity for you, and you know what you need to know to hit the ground running and to deal with any issues you may encounter. First of all, it's important to be aware of that for overseas talent as a foreign employee in a Chinese organization or even in a foreign company in China, often there is no internal mobility, or there is no path that you can follow to be promoted, say from associate to manager to senior manager. Generally speaking, organizations in China, and specifically Chinese organizations, they hire foreign talent, foreign experts for a position to resolve a specific problem within the organization that local talent, local managers cannot handle. It's not to say that a Chinese company can't be a good career opportunity. It has been so for me many, many times. However, what I found, and what you will likely find if you work in China or with Chinese organizations, is that if you want to take that next step in your career, it might be very hard to do it at the first company you join or the company you're currently at. You may have to be willing to take on greater risks, greater uncertainties by moving to a new company, which may have other risks that you aren't aware of, even if it's as simple as you just don't know the company, you don't know the management as well. But in my experience, that is what you need to do if you want to have the career mobility in China or working with Chinese companies. Another key risk and consideration for foreign employees, foreign experts working in China or with Chinese organizations is whether or not you will be able to communicate effectively. And as probably know, being able to communicate even at the basic level can have a huge impact on whether or not you're able to do your job effectively. For example, whether you're able to read the contract you're signing, whether you're able to participate in meetings, whether you're even able to ask your boss for instructions without you, say, understanding Chinese, or without you understanding that, say, whether or not your boss or coworkers will be able to communicate with you in English or your native language. That can be a big risk. And so it's very important to understand what the communication barriers will be at a specific company, not China in general, but a specific company, before you accept that offer letter, before you come on board. In some industries in China, it's common to have very significant incentive-weighted salary or compensation packages. This could include not simply your monthly salary, but it could include a year-end bonus. Could be 1 month's salary, could be multiple months' salary. You might have stock options. You may have subsidies for food, for housing, things like that. And what I found is that in my own experience, there have been times that my own compensation package has been anywhere from 30% to 50% of my overall compensation package. And I've heard that number being even higher for local Chinese employees. Now, this isn't to say that you shouldn't accept an offer with a different compensation model. If you perform well, you often can get much more than you might get at a similar job overseas. It certainly happens, especially in tech in my experience. However, it's also important to be aware of that these are not for certain. Bonuses can be held back for any number of reasons. Obviously, if your personal performance doesn't come through, you may not get it. But if the department's performance doesn't meet expectations, if the company's performance doesn't meet expectations, you certainly might not get that bonus, or it might not be as much as you wanted. Stock options could be given, they could be not given. They could end up being very valuable, they might be worthless. And then of course, subsidies, they sound good on paper, but whether or not you can actually get them as a foreigner in China, it's up in the air. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So that's something else to be aware of. Now, 老员工, or old employees, legacy employees, how you might say it in English, are employees that have been at a specific company for either their entire careers or maybe most of their careers, say joining right after they graduated from college. Now, these employees oftentimes will have very good internal networks. They will have built up lots of trust with teams and with management, but it's also very common for their expertise to not be able to keep up with the company's development, what the company needs. So it's certainly very common to have old employees in charge of departments, in charge of entire business units, who maybe don't fully understand what's happening, whether it be, say, for the overseas business or even for the domestic business. Now, when you're joining a Chinese company as a foreign expert, these types of employees can be very valuable, for sure, and they're certainly someone you want to develop relationships with. They can help you out of tight spots if you know the right people. That being said, they can also cause some difficulties for you as well. If, for example, you're reporting to someone who is a 老员工, who maybe they don't understand that well the area they're working in, especially if it's for the overseas market, it may be harder for you to convince them to accept your proposals. There may be lots of back and forth that's needed. It may create lots of extra work for you. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but it is par for the course if you're working as a foreign expert in a Chinese company with lots of old employees. It can also be a risk to your career in that these 老员工, especially if they don't have the experience, some have the experience but many don't, is that they're very risk averse. They're very focused on being safe, holding on to their positions because they can't really get another job outside their current company. They don't have the experience. They mainly have the trust and the experience inside that company they're at now. So that means that if you're trying to do your job and go in one direction that the company needs to go in, but this might feel risky to your manager or to a coworker, they often will try and pull back. And so there can be lots of intentional or unintentional kind of fighting back and forth. And that can certainly impact one's either career development, or it can simply create a lot of extra stress at work. Now, it's hard to understand what exactly might be the situation at a specific company, but it does help to try and better understand who you'll be reporting to before you join a Chinese organization, what their experience is, what they want you to be working on. And that is one of those things you can do to try and mitigate some of that risk. But no matter what company you join, there's always going to be 老员工, there's always going to be these old employees, again, not age-related, and you're going to have to be able to find a way to balance what you need to do for the company and maybe what their needs are, what their ideas are in terms of what they want to do to keep their positions. And so, again, playing politics, watch my previous video on that, but it is necessary, especially in these companies with these types of employees who, good Chinese phrase, they want to eat from the golden rice bowl. They found something good, they found something that gives them lots of money and opportunities, and they want to hold on to that. They're not going to give that up. Another risk I'd like to discuss is much more of a risk than some of the other ones I've talked about in the video so far. Most of the risks I talk about in this video can be mitigated. There's pros and cons. You can find a way to maybe turn it to your advantage, but dual manager positions, I found in the last few years, I've seen a few of these, and these are when you're not asked to come on in a manager role or a director role or even a VP role. You're saying, oh, well, we have someone who's doing that, but we want you to come in and co-manage that business or co-manage that area. And it's always been really, really strange. I've been in one of these roles before, and what I found the reasons to be are oftentimes either one, you maybe have a business head who doesn't really have any experience, and they are worried about someone, maybe their subordinates surpassing them. And so if they put two people under them to manage the work they can't do themselves, what will happen is they will maybe manage these people so they maybe will be in conflict with each other, and then if these two people below them are in conflict, the person above them is often a 老员工, is safe. Another situation I found is companies that have someone very junior with no experience working on a certain issue. They can't actually do the job. They might find an expert to bring in. and be like the second manager, but they're actually the one bringing in the experience. The second version is a little bit better than the other one, but more or less, I would highly advise anyone against accepting a dual manager role, because as a foreign expert, as a foreign talent, it's not going to be beneficial to you. It's supposed to be beneficial to the company. It might be beneficial to the Chinese person who is the second manager, because they're going to be learning from you, but it's not going to be beneficial to you. It's meant to only be beneficial to the company and to exploit you to a certain degree. So I don't see that very often, but whenever I do, I walk away. I would never consider that type of role unless I had no other options open to me. Lastly, geopolitics is a key risk that's going to affect anyone who's choosing to work in China or choosing to work with Chinese organizations overseas or in China. And this is something that's really up in the air. It's impossible to know when the Chinese government is going to do something that impacts business, or the US government is going to, as you've seen with companies like Huawei, TikTok, decide that a company is a threat to national security interests and take certain action against them. Now, this can impact a company's business expansion overseas. It can cause business departments to cut people. It can cause bonuses to not be received because the companies did not meet business expectations. And so it's also, to be honest, it may make people your business circle, your friends, your family, maybe look at you differently if there's extra negative news out about China, and you have to decide, are you going to be willing to weather that storm? China is a great opportunity, and there's so many great technologies and products and services coming from Chinese companies now. But there are risks if you want to be able to experience that, live in that world, as I have been for the past 10 to 12 years. You also have to take on some of these extra risks. I think in the end, the payout is much better. You learn and get, both monetarily and otherwise, you get much more than you put in, but you have to be willing to accept that uncertainty if you want to have that journey. In closing, I'll say again that listing these risks and considerations about working in China or with Chinese companies is not meant to dissuade you from considering a career in China or with China. Simply speaking, it's meant to let you find the best opportunity, or the opportunity that's more suitable to what you're looking to get out of a job or a career. Because working with Chinese companies is not for everyone, and there's certainly some companies that are more aggressive. There are some companies that have many more risks or uncertainties. And understanding what you want, understanding what might impact you at work with a Chinese company or in China, can help you better find the right opportunity for you. That's it for today's video. If you're interested in learning more about China, living and working in China, Chinese culture, the Chinese people, Chinese technology, I'd really appreciate a sub to my YouTube channel, and you can follow me on social media for regular updates and insights on China. All right, thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you guys next time.